Hey, everybody. In today's episode, it's myself, Benjamin B., and Dr. T. In this episode, we're discussing how you can potentially help your loved one recognize that they have a problem with drugs and alcohol. I think you may be surprised with our answer to this question. Now, this question was posed to us in our Facebook group called the Sobriety Network. If you haven't heard of that, go to Facebook and type in the Sobriety Network, and you can join there. Once we finish with that, we get into a couple other questions that were asked in our Facebook group. And one of them was, recovery taught me, and then fill in the blank. And we go over some of the comments that we saw in there. Pretty fascinating stuff. We cover all that and more. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What is happening, everyone?
And we've got Dr. T.
Hi, everyone.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your message into your message rate peeps.
Yes, sirree. The peeps say yes.
It's happening, friends.
Trying to switch it up.
Nice socks, T.
Thanks.
You wore them again.
It's my dog.
Yep.
Is that legit? Like a picture?
Yeah.
A photo?
What's your dog's
It
name?
was my first husky. Not the current one's didn't make the list yet.
You have one or two?
I had one, she died, and then I impulsively bought a second one to fill the void, which is a bad decision.
Yeah.
But it's 3 years now, so I love him.
It's awful.
Mm-hmm.
I have two dogs that I reluctantly regret getting. So I did barbecue a couple nights ago, and I was doing sandwiches, pork sandwiches, another pork. And I have a Traeger flat iron griddle, and I was going to take buns and toast them on the griddle. So I had 6 buns on the counter, all buttered. Well, one of my children decided to let the dogs inside, and Ruby went up on the counter and ate all 6 of the buns. So we didn't have sandwiches that night.
How big is Ruby?
She's probably 70 pounds.
Oh,
Yeah.
She's a big girl.
Yep. So anyways, here we are. Pulled some stuff off of the Sobriety Network. If you don't know about the Sobriety Network, it's our Facebook group, and we highly encourage you to go there and join. It's the Sobriety Network on Facebook, and you just go there, you plug your email in, answer a couple of questions, and we're going to let you in. It's like the town hall for all things addiction. What do you guys got? There was a post in there that was, Ben, I think you mentioned it.
How to make your loved one recognize they have a problem or need help. It was a question that somebody asked. I guess, how do you make somebody recognize they need help?
Yeah. I mean, we get that question a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Can I sum that up really quickly and easily?
Well, I mean, let's try and drag it out a little bit.
All right.
We can hit on the other ones. There's a bunch of different things we could.
Okay, go ahead, Ben. Let's see what you got.
Essentially, just to give somebody like a quick answer, because I see a lot of commenting stuff where people want to like sit down and tell their loved one they have a problem. The reality of the situation is, from what I've seen, the thing that works best is just get out of their way and let their problem run them over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let their problem happen to them, because that's where they're going to end up seeing it themselves, versus sit them down. Hey, Tommy, I think you're drinking too much.
Yeah, you can't just go to them and tell them that they have a problem. They have to experience it. So how do they experience it is probably, like, read the question again.
How do you make your loved one recognize they have a problem or need help?
So I would flip that and say, what can you do? You can't make them recognize that they have a problem, but there's things that you may be able to do for yourself that helps them recognize that they have a problem.
I always bring it back to resources too. And, this goes back to enabling. And I don't think we can bring up enabling too much. I'll just call it what it is because people continue to ask about it no matter how much we cover it. But as far as resources go, if you're providing for them, things that they can be providing for themselves, like let's call it what it is. If my mom is like, oh, Ben's going to starve, so she comes by my apartment and fills my refrigerator with food so I have food, guess what? I don't need grocery money now. That's a come up financially. Now I have more money and resources for drugs and alcohol. Just simple stuff like that. Am I paying for their cell phone? Because anybody that has their life together, not being affected by drugs and alcohol, for the most part, should be able to provide for themselves, so to speak. And if you're providing for them, you're just giving them more opportunity to get high.
Yeah. We see that all too often. And parents and loved ones have a hard time even identifying that they're doing this. And when you bring it up to them, a lot of times they're in denial.
Mm-hmm.
It's out of their own fear, though, too. Because notice what I said also. Yes, denial. You're 100% correct. I'll ride with that. But at the same time, like, oh, Ben's going to starve. Or if he doesn't have a phone, then when he really needs help, how's he going to get a hold of me? Or if he doesn't have gas money, how's he going to get to an AA meeting the day that he actually wants to go?
Yeah.
Stuff along those lines. But that's out of their own fear. If I'm not providing something for them, then they're not going to make it, is essentially what it is. But the reality of the situation is, as long as alcohol and drugs are involved, it doesn't matter what you're giving them. Death is on the table.
I like what you always ask the parents.
Not what is your drug of choice, but who is your drug of choice. Since you brought it up, yeah, I use that one a lot at family weekend. I'll ask a parent, like, what's your drug of choice? And they'll be like, huh, me? I don't do drugs. And I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. Who is your drug of choice? Like, what do you mean? Oh, my son Tristan would be that. Once I explain, like, are you losing sleep over it? Time, energy, resources? How much anxiety is it causing you? How much money have you spent trying to help them in their addiction? How many times have you had to leave work to go rescue them and try and cover up for yourself, like hiding from your boss, like, or whatever the case is? Like, how much has it affected your family dynamic? Like, you're paying the same toll as the drug addict, and you're not even getting to get high. You just get all the negatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no return. There's no return on your investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also some of them don't know what drug abuse and substance use is. So some of them are frankly naive, but some of them are in denial because of the stigma associated with it too. I think it takes some people a little bit longer to acknowledge and accept that their family member or loved one is an addict or an alcoholic, because that changes their lives and dramatically, on both ends, whether it's the relationship with their loved one, but also people are worried about what are other people going to think? What are my other family members going to think? How are we going to navigate this as a family? So sometimes it takes people longer. But don't be fooled also by the addict or an alcoholic. They know they have a problem. They are in denial. Yes, a lot of them are in denial until something does happen to them negatively, but they are well aware they have a problem and what they're doing is probably not like with societal norms, because that's why they start hiding things. That's why they start, dipping and diving and lying and it just snowballs.
You know how they can get educated, though, T and Ben, the families and loved ones? You know what would be good for them to get educated?
What's that, Tom?
Join the Big Book study that we have starting on January 6th, 5 p.m. Eastern. Myself and Eric, we're in Ben and T. You guys are going to make, guest appearances. But Eric's going to be breaking down the Big Book. And let me explain to you why this is important for you to be there, family members and loved ones, because if you understand the Big Book and you understand how alcoholism and addiction works in our lives, then you're able to navigate it on a much more appropriate level. It's when you understand the nuts and bolts behind addiction and what we go through on a day-to-day basis, and you're able to make decisions based off of truth and facts and wisdom versus thinking that you got it all figured out. So January 6th, 5 p.m. Eastern. Now you have to register for that. It's at realrecoverytalk.com/bigbookstudy, and we'll remind you when it starts.
Speaking of thinking you got it all figured out, you know what we see once in a while? This one isn't as common, but a lot of the times pride and ego of the parents or loved ones also gets in the way, where they're like, I'm going to be the one to fix them. It's going to be me who fixes them. We don't see it often, but it does happen. For instance,
got a frog in your throat, Ben?
Yeah, man.
Rice. Yes, some rice in
Should
his
eat
throat.
some chicken.
The turkey's stuck in there. But where was I?
Pride and ego of the parent.
Yeah, we end up with, and we did a little reel on this, Dr. T. Get into chopper. Helicopter parents, for instance. And we've literally sat down and did a intervention setting before where the parents there, the loved one, the addict is there, and the parents literally telling us what they need. And I can't help but think to myself, when you see I'm just going to call it what it is. Sometimes there's a level of arrogance that just comes off of some folks. And it's I'm going to tell the treatment center what to do so that I can say my son got better because I told them how to fix him. Well, if that was the case, why didn't you fix him in the first place? Get out of the way. You're not, and a lot of that too, I think, has to do with their fear of how they're going to be perceived, whether conscious or unconscious. Oh, my kid's a drug addict, I'm a bad parent, I couldn't fix them. Doesn't make you a bad parent. There's no manual on hey, what to do when my kid ends up a junkie. But pride and ego get in the way too of parents allowing their son or daughter to get help.
Yeah. T, what else you got from the Facebook group, the Sobriety Network on Facebook?
You should bring up that one because it'll piggyback off of this that said we talk about.
When did you first realize your loved one might have a problem with drugs or alcohol? What signs stood out to you? That one?
No, the one about why we cover.
I feel like a lot of your posts,
Yeah.
That one, someone commented, I feel like a lot of your posts are geared, and this was in response to that post. I feel like a lot of your posts are geared towards affected family and not the affected individual. With that being said, my mother, who at the time was a rehab nurse, in the lobby of my office made me stick out my tongue and extend my hands, and then proceeded to tell me I was going through massive alcohol withdrawals and it was imperative I make the call, which I did, which led to my first stint of inpatient treatment. If not for her, I may not be sober today.
I wanted to bring that up because I do think it's important, kind of tie into what Tom was just talking about even not just alcoholics and addicts understand the big book, but the loved ones too. At the end of the day, the way that when I saw that comment, I was like, you know what? Here's the thing. We get sober, and at some point, I've dealt with multiple family members who have ended up needing help. If you're in recovery, whether you're involved in a 12-step program or maybe a coworker that you're with has a drinking problem or whatever the case is, you're going to be on the other side of this at some point in time, regardless. Now when we're in the thick of it as an alcoholic and drug addict, we're the only thing that matters. But as soon as you enter early recovery, and we see this, dude, we have a guy with us now that had a buddy that went back out and relapsed, and he's telling us, I need to go rescue this guy. Give me my car keys. I'm going down to Delray Beach to pick him up. And meanwhile, this dude's shooting dope. I'm like, bro, let other people handle it. You got 3 weeks sober. Relax. Send somebody else. You don't need to. And that's the importance of being educated on both sides of this thing.
Yeah, it's super sober. And I that's happened to me too. I remember, if I look back on early sobriety days, I thought I was super sober and could fix anybody and look at me. But luckily I had people in my life that could step in and intervene like you did with him to tell him like, hey, chill, man. You know, it says it straight in it says it somewhere. I don't know where. Maybe you can refresh my memory. Never to do a 12-step call alone. You know, always go with somebody. For the most part. I mean, there are instances where you go alone, but you know, I've gone and met with people that are slap drunk by myself, but I'm in a much different place in my sobriety. I could do that and not be risking anything.
Yeah. No, that's accurate.
Yeah, this conversation, it wasn't this post, but there was a post before someone who's in recovery now. I guess their sibling is now suffering addiction, and they were asking like, how now do I navigate this? Basically, you know, and I thought that was a good question because I'm sure he went through, you know, the program or did something obviously to get sober and maintain his sobriety, but now he's seeking help because his sibling is doing probably everything that he sees himself and his sibling in active recovery, and how to navigate that, and was looking for like insight into that.
Yeah, again, this goes back to my point where you get into early recovery and this stuff is you're all of a sudden going to be on the other side of it. You will. Like, I 100% guarantee it. We even recently had a case where a young man came here, and then a couple months later, his mom came here, like as a result of seeing her son get sober, you know? So it's like, you're going to get exposed. You're going to be on both sides. You know, once you're sober, we have to give away what has been so freely given us, as they would say.
There was another post on here. I think you had mentioned it, that Billy had commented in it.
Oh yeah. It was the post. Where is it? Let me find it. Like, what are you grateful for today?
Finish this sentence. Recovery has taught me.
Oh, yes. Life doesn't have to be great in order for me to stay sober.
Shout out to Big Billy.
Yeah.
That's my coach. Anybody that doesn't know.
His bodybuilding coach.
Instagram handle, Billy G Fit.
Yeah. And I tell you what, if anybody has the right to post that, he does.
Yes. Yeah.
For sure.
No, Billy's been on the podcast, and I'm sure he won't mind if I kind of talk about it a little bit. Read his comment one more time.
Life doesn't have to be great in order for me to stay sober.
So, God, I lose track of time. I feel bad about that. But maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, Billy had 5-6 years sobriety, maybe 7. He's coming up on maybe 8. I don't know, somewhere in there. My time frames suck. But his wife passed away in a driving accident, just suddenly. You know, she was like 30 years old. They have been married, have a 2-year-old. Like, all of a sudden, Billy's a single dad with a little girl. Like, talk about, I watched this man's life get flipped upside down. You know, you get sober and then you go through a tragedy like that. Like, and she was a wonderful, wonderful girl. I mean, just an amazing human being, you know, and he's experiencing all the rewards of recovery, and then all of a sudden, poof, like your life is turned upside down like that. And I will go out as far to say is, if he took a drink, I would have said, you know what? If anyone was justified, that was the situation. But I remember he actually called me immediately, and I was at the house within probably 15, 20 minutes of that happening, because he was leaving the hospital and he called me but you know, one of the first things we did, regardless of everything, all the chaos going on in his life, we went to a meeting together.
That night?
No, this was late at night. So it was like the next day, you know, even with all the chaos going on, like,
wow,
you know, jumping straight into what do I got to do to stay sober?
Yeah.
You know, and I don't even know, I don't want to speak for him, but I don't even so much think like he thought that he needed to go to a meeting because he was afraid he was going to take a drink. I don't think it was anything like that. But what we get out of meetings today, what we get out of sobriety, what we get out of spiritual principles, what we get out of God is so much more than just not picking up a drink or a drug today. That's a beautiful thing about it.
Well, it's community. Go into a meeting, there's people there that you can rely on. Even in an instance like that, I can see, and I've obviously never experienced anything like that, but that would probably be one of the first places I would go to, because even immediate family, like, I could see not being a place that I would want to go to or to be around, because immediate family is going to ask questions. They're going to, all that stuff, versus you go into a meeting and you're just like covered in love, and support. And, they don't ask questions. They don't, it's just, we're here for you. We're here for you. We're here for you. So yeah, that was good that he put that. And then Randy put, recovery has taught me that the past happened, but it doesn't exist today. There's no alternative world that I get to step into and be a better Randy yesterday. Stay present. I like that, because it just goes to show that the past is the past. What's it say in the big book? We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it.
Correct, Tom.
That's 9-step promises?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, finish that sentence, Ben. Huh? 9-step promises. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. What you did, listen, I'm grateful for everything that I did, that I put people through, the relationships that I ruined, the money that I stole, the cars that I crashed, all that stuff. I'm super grateful that all that happened, because it wouldn't make me who I am today had I not gone through that stuff. And we all have that. And going back to what the one guy said, that I think that this group is more geared towards, or some of these posts are more towards families and loved ones. Well, it may appear that way, but we're all humans. And 12-step, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, any of these programs, like, this has very little to do with drugs and alcohol. It's about living a better life. So why would we want to deprive family members and loved ones of experiencing that through our experiences, just because they haven't, quote unquote, suffered from alcoholism or drug addiction? I think it's very beneficial for them. We have an unfair advantage to life, as some people say. And I think family members and loved ones should be a part of that as well. T?
Yeah, I think that obviously, being someone who myself is not in recovery, family members and loved ones and people like me learn from people in recovery who have had these past experiences, who openly talk about their behaviors and what happened and why it happened. And for me, it's very educational and informative, and it opened my mind and my eyes to things to a whole world that I never knew existed or understood, and human behavior. And so that's my hope for family members and loved ones, is that I want them to learn from and help each other and support each other. But I also hope that they learn from hearing other people's stories, and that other people's stories that they can relate to, that it can give them hope, that it can help them learn something about themselves or their relationship, whatever they're going through, and how to cope with it and manage it, with their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you have to be an alcoholic or an addict to relate to an alcoholic or addict's story. Like, I believe that if someone went and sat in an AA meeting, at an open speaker meeting where somebody shares their story, they could probably relate to a lot of it. Something I want to ask y'all, because I wasn't here, that I think is related. Like, for instance, rumor has it that you all did an episode with Eric the other day.
Yeah.
Talking about the big book. And I heard both of you were like tearing up and got emotional.
Tambini was.
I was. You almost did. It's hard to make me cry, and he made my eyes water.
And that's what that's about, like that human connection, regardless of where the source of the pain came from.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people relate to that. Like, you had never heard any of his story before, right?
I've heard his story, but I've never heard him speak so candidly, like how he You know, when
Yeah.
he was going through the big book and the relation to it and breaking it down, it's something like no one should miss.
Yeah.
Episode 453.
Oh,
In
it did
case
come out.
It
didn't
did
it?
come out, yeah.
Yeah, I started watching it. That's right. I was eating my English muffins.
Yeah, it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about the big book study that we're starting on January 6th at 5 p.m.
I highly recommend. Listen, I only watched about 5 minutes of that episode. 453, you said?
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, go back and listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have to hear it to know that probably the summary is what I'm assuming it would have been. A summary of his experience going through the big book is absolutely worth hearing.
Yeah, I would encourage you to go on YouTube and watch it if you have time, even if you listen to it, because a lot of people listen to audio in the car and stuff like that. But if you're at home, cooking dinner, maybe making some chicken stir fry, put on the YouTube channel and watch it, because watching it will elicit a much deeper response in you than listening to it. I mean, and we sit here and we're in it, but man, it was pretty impactful. And I hear his story day in and day out, but every single time that man speaks about the big book, you can't help but just be captured by it. And I've heard it time and time again. I mean, for God's sakes, I'm committing to doing it again with him for an hour every Monday for the next however long.
You know what's cool too is I saw it. I remember seeing him when he first got sober, and I remember sitting in Oasis and he was up in the front row, and I'm like, look at this psycho, like for real. And then he only had like a few months sober, and I went and I picked up a client from a place I won't mention the name, and Eric was the maintenance guy there, and we ended up like recognizing each other. He's like, "Oh, I do maintenance for but like I'm like, there's something about him, man. The cool thing about it is that a man that looks as hard as he does, and frankly has a past that's
as hard as he does,
like can elicit a response from people the way that he does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a good soft landing to this episode. January 6th, 5 p.m. Eastern, realrecoverytalk.com/big book study. Again,
Will no longer be known for the insurrection. It'll be known.
That's right, Ben.
For the beginning of the greatest big book study ever.
That was good. I like what you did there. Tambini, any final thoughts?
No, I'm excited. I'm really excited for the big book study. I've been telling everyone about it. And I think people who even if they don't work in the industry, literally anyone who watches it can learn something. And it's not, like you said, it's not about drugs and alcohol. It's about learning about yourself and how to be a better person. And it's about perspective and how you look at life and how you approach things in life.
Yeah.
And you can learn so much from it.
To that, you know what happened yesterday? You're a person that's here now that's kind of like a childhood friend in a way.
Yeah.
You know how that individual is very closed off to AA and steps and stuff along those lines.
Yeah.
I ran group and I did it on the 4-step, and I went at it of the angle of the psychology behind it, like exactly like it's laid out in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, finally, like, he's like, I get it. It's all in the way that things are communicated. People see that and hear that language and they're like, what is this hocus pocus? But when you're able to like go with somebody that thinks logically, because there's a lot of alcoholics and addicts out there that are so logical, and that's all they rely on is logic and reason, that they get in their own way. If you can bring it to them and communicate in a way that they understand the reason and logic behind it, you can win them over all day long.
Yeah. I agree. No, that's good to hear. That's awesome. Ben, any final thoughts?
No, we're good.
Can I ask one favor of the audience, please? If you're listening to this or watching on YouTube, please go leave us a review on Apple Podcast, if that's where you're listening, or Spotify, anywhere that you listen. They really help us, and I'm trying to get some reviews, get them built up. And I know there's a lot of you out there listening that, you just don't take the time to leave a review. Because listen, I'm the same exact way. I'm a Mind Pump fanboy, and I've never left them a review.
Rude.
Just being transparent.
Really?
Yeah. Have you? No. Okay. So I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to go on and leave them a review right when we finish up. So you can leave us a review.
I do leave little hearts on their IG, which I don't leave a lot of hearts.
That's not a review.
But is that the equivalent to a like, a heart?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the IG world, yeah.
Yeah, that is, Ben. Yep. All right, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com, and ultimately we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.